Okay, lesson 2, the historical, social, and economic first background to the Buddha. Um, we'll look at religious background separately. So first of all, the historical background. So the time that the Buddha was born into was a time that was undergoing great change. Uh, just at that point in history when uh, nations, well, better republics were collapsing and being overtaken by monarchies. Um, these small city republics were being gobbled up by larger monarchies. Uh, we have the Iron Age. Land is being cultivated. Population is growing because there's increased production of food. Cities are being developed. It's already been happening for 1,000 years. The Indus Valley cities, so increased urbanization. And as a result of all this, people are starting to question the prevailing religious ideology that is the synthesis of the Indus Valley and especially Indo-European migrating peoples that came into the basin of the Ganges area. So lots of new religious movements developing in and around this time. In terms of the sociological background, this area that the Buddha was born into, the Ganges basin, was ruled by a Hindu, Brahmin better, committee of elders. He belonged to the Shakti tribe, a tribe that was previously a republic that was growing and becoming a monarchy. So it was an unusual thing in that it both had elements of republics and monarchies within this one tribe. Decisions, though, were made by people like his father, an aristocratic Krishya, or a high caste Hindu. His father was the king, as it were, of this emerging monarchy. This group would have inherited these Krishyas. His father included their family, their roles in society through their family status, or because of just their age and importance. And Siddhartha is lucky, he's one of these. During Siddhartha's time, many of these republics, these smaller areas ruled by elders, were losing power, and growing in power were several monarchies, although these were merging together, increasing in size and importance, especially that of Magadha and Koshala. Siddhartha was acquainted with at least two of the kings of these growing monarchies, and perhaps his own father had alliances with them. Pasandi of Koshala and Bimbisara of Magadha. Some of the scholars believe that the relationship between the Buddha and the kings influenced the Buddha's attitude to leadership, both positively and negatively. Perhaps he so organized the Sangha so that decisions were made by consensus, much like the old republics, rather than appointing one single leader like the monarchies. Siddhartha's experience, perhaps, of monarchies and tyranny might have led him to question the wisdom of leaving all the power in one person. Cities had begun to grow. They were centered on these royal courts, but developed because of strategic things like trade routes. New roles, though, with these trade routes developed in society. That the traditional caste system that had been introduced by the Brahmins didn't quite fit with. Notice on the right here this drawing that suggests it was the privileged, those old Indus Valley / Aryan Indo-Europeans who had brought, sweeping from the west to the east, the Brahmanism, And with that, the belief that the Brahmins were in charge and they would delegate authority to the Kshatriyas and the Vaishya Varna. And the indigenous people, the Sudras, were the ones who had trouble. And it's just this group of people in particular that Buddhism would have appealed to. Many of the new religious movements appeal to this group. Importantly, with greater population densities, increased trade relations and contact between different urban centers, new religious ideas could spread and challenge old religious ideas. And this made it all the more likely to question the status quo of those living in particular places like villages or towns. It was easy to think of India as a poor country, but in fact it wasn't. Already 1,000 years before the Buddha, the Indus Valley period had been an incredible advanced society with running water, sewage systems, irrigation systems. We tend to assume food and famine were commonplace, but in fact, at the time of Siddhartha, it just wasn't the case. The Ganges Basin was an area where the introduction of the Iron Age from the Bronze Age had meant that axes could be forged, forests could be chopped down, and fertile land could be farmed with rice, a new kind of emerging technology that would allow lots of food to be produced with less effort. In addition, the remaining forest could provide food for the inhabitants of the region. And as land was settled, more of it was cultivated for rice growing. In depth then, so this is our little in-depth look at the history and geography of the Buddha. So a little bit more depth here. So this is called the Indo-Aryan migration theory. It's the idea that this, and it's controversial to use the word Aryan, I think you can guess. Maybe we should use Slavic or perhaps precisely Indo-European people. The Caucasus would be the countries we think of today. And this group of pastoral, nomadic, herding but expansionist warrior people had migrated in waves over several thousand years from perhaps 4,000 or 5,000 BCE right up until the beginning of and into the Vedic period. When they arrived, though, this Indo-European people found the Indus Valley society already set up, already a sophisticated society, with its own small group of perhaps proto-gods. It was religiously animistic, with evidence of a mother goddess, fertility, rituals, and so on. But the Aryans from the north brought with them a wider range of gods. And this would have been added to by contact, perhaps going down the Indus River into the sea and over to Mesopotamia, trading with Egypt and even Babylonia, would have brought yet more ritualistic and liturgical polytheistic practices. You see on the left here the Indus script. If you can decipher it, let me know. No one knows what it means just yet. So the Indus Valley civilization is really key. It predates the Vedic world, what came before, and it predates the influence of the Aryan or the Indo-European people. And it's important to have a little handle on what religion was in it. The Indus Valley died off at the beginning of the Vedic period, 1500 BC. Why? No one quite knows. Trade problems, war, famine, who knows? What we have, though, is a religious synthesis of this Indian people towards the end of this period, as the Aryans migrated and this was carried east by new migrations of Aryans as the Bronze Age gave way to the Iron Age in East India. A key idea here is the Iron Age. This was a densely forested area, the Ganges Basin. And the Bronze Age just didn't cut it, literally. It took iron axes and the small republics run by perhaps others of the ancestors of the Buddha would have had similar sort of animistic religions until the Brahmanism that was created by the synthesis of Aryan and Indus Valley religion was brought east sometime after 1500 to 1000 BC. In particular, it was in the couple of hundred years before the Buddha, as large quantities of iron was found in Magadha, making weapons and importantly axes, so they could cut the trees down. And with that would come Brahmanism in order to order the society. In terms of the economic background to the Buddha, the irrigation of land was important. The Ganges meant that land could be cultivated all year round, and rice could be grown in increasing quantities. People were able to produce more resources with little effort. This gave people more resources to trade. It allowed them to pursue a wider range of activities, and it was less related to food production. So society could produce and trade in a wider range of goods. Without this, the development of the Sangha would not have flourished. It needed a laity who would donate food to the Sangha, and if the laity were only barely able to survive themselves, they couldn't obviously give food to the Sangha. So can you see the important relationship between the Buddha's social and cultural experiences, his background, and his development of the notion of the Sangha. Okay, that's the first video. The next video will look more specifically at the religious background.